Welcome back to Ask the Meshperts. If you've joined us before, you know what we're all about. If it's your first time here, this is a weekly series of a short Q&A that talks to all things Kubernetes, microservices, and service mesh. We aim to focus on community topics and also any questions that we receive from any of you. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to find us at hello@askthemesh.io. So today what we're going to talk about is surfacing the most important data in your mesh, what's often referred to as observability. The nice thing about a service mesh is it's really well positioned to gather a lot of data out of your cluster. So what's the best way to visualize and make decisions based on that information? So before we dive in, can you both give a quick introduction?
Yeah, I'm Dwayne. I'm a software engineer here at Aspen Mesh, and focusing mainly on the back-end services.
Yeah. My name's Alex. I'm the UI engineer here, so I take all the data Dwayne gives me and I make it look nice.
That's right. We sure do. Thanks, guys. So a little bit back to how well a service mesh is positioned to gather some of that data. If we think about a service mesh like SDO or Aspen Mesh, one of the parts of that is Envoy. And the nice thing about Sidecar Proxy is it sits right next to each of your services, so it's really well positioned to be able to gather all that data coming out of your cluster. And I should add push policy and configuration back down to those services as well. But the traffic is already being intercepted, and it's pretty easy to feed that data up to the control plane and gather it. I think the challenge is surfacing and visualizing it in a way that's powerful and actionable, I would say, so you know what to do with it once you have the data. So thinking about Envoy, what does it do that is really good at helping you understand kind of the health status of all the services in your mesh?
So Envoy is this proxy. It's a really fast proxy. It's right there deployed as a sidecar with your services, and all the traffic coming into your service goes through Envoy, and all the everything where your service is reaching out to other sibling microservices, it's all going through Envoy as well. And so since Envoy is just like in the middle of all this traffic, it's the perfect place to see all of your metrics as far as how long your service is taking, and how long it's taking for to talk to another service, and also you get all the service discovery, like your service might be deployed to 3 different pods, and then one of them gets lost and gets redeployed. Kubernetes spins it up again. Envoy takes care of like where your service is running.
Finding that restarted pod again.
Yeah.
Which is pretty important.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah.
So Envoy, it gets you all those metrics. It figures out where everything is. It knows the health of your service, and yeah, it's right in the middle of everything.
Yep. So pretty well positioned to kind of gather all that data. That's a data plane proxy or a data plane service mesh, depending on what you want to call it. A control plane service mesh, how does it improve upon all the data that you get with something like a sidecar?
Yeah, so Envoy is controlled by the control plane, obviously, but then it can also relay telemetry from your service back up to the control plane. And so we can export all that information and put that into a platform where we can have more insight into how your service is running, and we can still also control what different aspects of that service are.
Right. And I think the beauty of a control plane is it really takes all those Envoy sidecars and turns it into a true distributed system, which is makes it easier to monitor everything from one place and helps with scalability and all kinds of issues like that.
Yeah, and then we can also do things like have, like we were talking about, MTLS, where you have 2 services running side by side, and it's a mutual TLS, so it's secure communication between the 2 services without any burden on the services themselves.
Right. Yep, that's an important part of it. It's one of the big advantages. So there's a blog out there from Matt Klein that's really good, and it talks about the difference between a data plane and a control plane service mesh. and my favorite part of that blog is he said what a control plane really does is it kind of takes the human out of it. For a long time, the human was the control plane. It was something like this that replaces the human with the control plane, so it can help you manage some of that stuff that you have to do yourself and make some better decisions that way. I think one of the ways it enables that is through the actual control plane UI. And Alex, being our front-end UI expert, I wondered if you'd add a little bit about what you get with the Service Mesh UI, what it helps you do.
Yeah, sure. So some examples that we've done in Aspen Mesh are what Dwayne mentioned before with the MTLS is we can very easily see the status of the MTLS communication between two services. We can see what it's supposed to be configured as.
Yep. And
with the UI, just using some very simple icons and visual metaphors tell you if there's a problem security-wise there.
Yeah, that's true. And it's cool because you can see configuration if it's enabled or not. And you can also see if it's enabled and broken.
Exactly.
Know the difference
between
the two real quickly. Yeah.
So see what it should be, if it's broken, any problems there, and allows you to very quickly see that as opposed to having each service doing its own thing and having the former human control plane trying to keep that all straight in their head.
Yeah.
Other thing we're working on is certificates, so that if one needs to be rotated, instead of having a reminder in somebody's calendar, we can just see these things that's surfaced in the UI. Likewise, fingerprints, so it's coming out of Citadel, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yep. So having access to that gives you diagnostic ability there. So again, and this is kind of what I've come to realize in dealing with the UI, is that the Service Mesh just gives you a ton of data.
Yeah.
Right. Just, you mentioned before, data scientist dream.
Oh yeah.
And with that, the great power, great responsibility thing, but then having to take that and display that data in such a way that is immediately useful, is easily recognizable, seeing patterns and being able to recognize that. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah, and this is not a new challenge, having more data than you know what to do with.
Absolutely.
It is something you get with the Service Mesh, and being able to kind of abstract the signal from the noise is very key to operating the Service Mesh effectively, I would say. Yep. So talking UI, what are some key things that Service Mesh UI does? Like what are some really good benefits you get out of a good UI? What are some things that I think all UIs offer a level of observability, the ability to kind of like push some config and policy down to your mesh. But what do you want other than that? What's the next step with a good Service Mesh UI?
Absolutely. I think you touched on it right before, is the signal to noise ratio. Is that a really good UI is you should be able to look at something that's a large distributed system with multiple services talking to each other and easily be able to recognize bottlenecks, problem spots, that sort of thing. Likewise, just having it laid out so that you can see it in one place and you don't have to command line a dozen different areas, and having it all in a uniform structure or manner.
Based on real-time, data flowing in your cluster, being able to surface that in real time.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
So we've seen some pretty cool UIs in the last few weeks.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm trying to. Yeah, and you talk about like pushing config and doing that sort of thing. That we've been working with doing canary deploys and being able to do that through a UI. That, I mean, I'm not the back-end person, I just hit the API, but they assure me that the Istio config, in order to easily manage a canary deploy, to create it, and then to slowly route traffic to either the canary or the current production. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff there, but having a good UI around that makes it very simple. You can set it up, you can just get the information that you need, for example, a special cookie so that a user will be routed to that. And then not only can you set that up in the UI, you can route traffic to it, and like you said, you can watch it in real time.
Yeah, and we can use the same mechanism that's used for distributed tracing. That you can have multiple services all working together. Your canary deploy might be several services deep, and as long as we're all carrying all those distributed headers from service to service, you can have that. We call them experiments. We can experiment with some service that's several layers deep.
Yeah.
And really see in production how something's going to behave before you turn it loose on the general population.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
That is cool. Very cool. So talking about how there's so much data, and one of the things we're trying to do is figure out what data we care about. What about something like service mesh and AI, like Istio and TensorFlow? Seems like it would be a serious amount of points in buzzword bingo. What do you guys think? Are we there yet? Is there some potential around something like that to really help extract some of the most meaningful signal out of a service mesh?
I think it's a data scientist's dream. There's just tons of really good information, and I'm not a data scientist, but I can see where they would just put together some sort of machine learning model on top of this and really pull out some amazing insights about how a system is coordinating and working, and really be able to tell the health of something at a deep fundamental layer.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I haven't seen anything really yet around it, but I wonder if it's kind of the next emerging trend. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. I think currently, and what we're working towards is analytics. And I mean, a common thing that I'm using is the concept of like a threshold. For example, for alerting or just for changing the visual status of a service or a workload, you have a concept of a threshold, right? And for example, latency. And latency can vary a huge amount between different services. There might be one service where, 2 seconds, not a problem. But there might be another service where, if you're breaking, 250 milliseconds, that's an issue.
Right.
And I think that's really a prime example for where analytics could add a lot. Because the analytics could watch these things, they could sort of, flesh out possibilities of like these things generally operate within these bounds. If it's out here, that's a problem.
Yep.
And then of course, that would be for each service. And so you really get very fine-tuned, very specific visual notifications for your services if there are any issues.
And I guess know immediately if something goes wrong.
Exactly.
And I guess the promise there is kind of be alerted to an upcoming, like maybe you're even looking at something like your queue depth is starting to stack up, and it's not a problem yet, but indicative of that one is about to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Value and something like that.
Yeah, something that commonly correlates with the problem, so
Right.
that you can even nip it in the bud beforehand.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So this is great, but like let's kind of think about it from a higher level. And why does it matter? Being able to see all the data out of your mesh and get that observability is a really cool thing. But like as a business or even as a platform operator, who cares? What's it actually allowing you to do?
I think it's a game changer as far as developer velocity goes. There's so many. So many times I've written this before, the code to retry. Well, this service over here is sometimes flaky, so my service that's calling it, I need to put a retry loop in there or something silly like that. You don't have to worry about that with a service mesh. That's just one simple case in point. There's so many other benefits that to developer velocity. I think it's really some good stuff.
Yeah, and then the standardization of it all too.
Yeah.
I mean, all this information, instead of on a per service basis, it's all the same, and that really allows you to build a strong UI, because there are assumptions you can make about this data that you're getting. And, like we mentioned before, if you're having alerting, analytics, and just, simple visualization, really helps you diagnose issues just a lot faster and a lot sooner. And, keeps people from pulling their hair out when something goes wrong.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thanks, guys. We're trying to keep these pretty brief. Appreciate your time today. Appreciate anybody who has listened in. And a reminder that if you have any questions we can answer, reach out to us at hello@aspenmesh.io. Thanks.